Well, hello and an extremely warm welcome to my channel. My name's Louise, and a warm welcome if you are a new viewer to my channel, and equally warm welcome if you're returning. Bless you. So it's Shorty September, and I know I'm very late to the party in the sense that it's, nearly the end of Shorty September, but it did get me thinking about short reads, and I haven't yet read anything short this month, and actually, having had quite an intense reading week or so, preparing for events and things, I felt like a few short novels might actually be the way forward for me right now. So I have 6 books on my lap, 3 to recommend you, 3 that I've already read, and 3 that I haven't, that I'm hoping to read before the end of this month, before the month is out. So without further ado, here they are. So first up is Sula by Toni Morrison. Now this book actually won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and I could be wrong, but I think this is probably the slimmest of all of Toni Morrison's novels, and I don't hear it talked about very much, and yet there's something incredibly powerful about this very slight novel. It starts with the most beautiful scene setting. We're in a place called Bottom, which I think is in Ohio, I could be wrong. And we're seeing it from a sort of distanced perspective, somebody who's trying to make sense of the place. And what they can't understand is that Bottom is called Bottom, even though it's at the top of a hill or a mountain. And all the white people, I've just dropped a load of books, all the white people are living in the valley below, and all the black people are living up in the mountains. And so you've got this situation where Bottom is actually top. And the explanation is that Bottom is, it's closer to God. So it's kind of the bottom from the perspective of on high, as it were. So yeah, it's really interesting the way that this community is described right at the beginning. And even though it's a really short novel, it's a novella, the pace of it is fantastically leisurely. You really get to know not just the central characters, but those around them as well. I don't know how Toni Morrison does it. She manages to invest her characters with so much depth and humanity in such a very short space of time. So this tells the story of 2 friends, Sula and Nell, who sort of are growing up in the same community. They're not supposed to be friends because the parents object, and they're growing up in a place where, for young black girls in particular, life is incredibly tough. And yet, again, Morrison invests somehow a slight wryness, and you get the feeling there's kind of a smile in her voice as she's describing these characters. And she sets the scene, and it's almost dynastic because, you meet their grandmothers first and their mothers, and you see things through their eyes before you really get to know the 2 girls properly. The novel opens in 1919, just after the war, and there is the most poignant chapter. It's the second chapter of the book, which is set in 1919, and it's a young black man returning from, the Great War, the First World War, and he is completely psychologically totally damaged by the experience. And there's a total lack of understanding in terms of anything in place to kind of help him or support him, even though he's been fighting for, to save the world from sort of tyranny. And again, he's called Shadrach, which I think is a wonderful name. I'm sure that's a name that appears in Dickens, but I could be wrong. Anyway, his mental health, he thinks he can't look at his hands. He thinks there's something really wrong with his hands. And the way that's described is just mind-blowing. So this novel is really rich. It's like devouring really, really fine food, and yet it's focusing on very ordinary people in very troubled circumstances, in very troubled times. There's a real humanity to this book. These two young girls, they've become friends, and then one of them, Sula, goes off to live somewhere else for 10, well, to travel, actually. I say to live somewhere else, she travels for 10 years and then returns. And the circumstances of Nell, her friend, have completely changed. She's settled and married, whereas Sula has been, on the move. And it looks at how that alters their relationship and their perspective on each other. So yeah, I really, really recommend this as a brilliant, very fine short read. I'm just going to dive down and pick up the book that I threw on the floor. So I don't know whether it's because it's the autumn, but I seem to have picked the first two books anyway with quite sort of strong themes, books that sort of encourage you to meditate about the nature of human existence, and particularly, what man is capable of doing to man. And I think this author, Brian Moore, is an author who seems to have ceased to be talked about. And I was absolutely addicted to his books in my mid-20s. He was Graham Greene's favourite contemporary writer when he first started writing, and I'm a real fan of Graham Greene as well. Although it's interesting, I don't know, I haven't read any Graham Greene books for donkey's years either, so I'm not sure. I guess they probably stood the test of time, but I don't know. But anyway, in this book, Black Robe, which I think there's a film version of as well, Brian Moore was Canadian, and he sets this story in the 17th century in, I think, I want to say Quebec, but that could be completely wrong. But anyway, it's set somewhere in Canada. And what he's looking at the way that the Jesuits came to North America, not to conquer particularly, not to do, like a lot of sort of colonialization, but to actually convert the indigenous people. And so it tells the story of this priest who is called Black Robe because that's how the indigenous people refer to him, who trades muskets with some of the indigenous people in return for being escorted deeper into the landscape. And awful things happen. He gets captured by a different tribe. He's got a young assistant with him as well, who's only sort of 20. And so you've got this incredible clash. I was going to say clash, that's not a word. This incredible clash of cultures. You're seeing the Jesuits through the eyes of the indigenous North Americans, and you're also seeing the indigenous North Americans through the eyes of the Jesuits. And to me, this is a really balanced, as far as it ever can be, exploration of when two completely different cultures from completely different places with completely different beliefs and social behaviour collide, and we see the negatives, and there are huge negatives, but we also see lots of positives in both cultures as well. So it's a very sort of dense, contemplative adventure story in a way. And I loved it, and I would urge you, if you haven't read any of Brian Moore's books, please investigate, because he writes so well about human psychology, and I think there's a rawness and a depth and an honesty to his writing that I just absolutely love. And then I thought, well, I've sort of recommended two rather dark books. So this is Roddy Doyle's The Commitments, which I just think, I had a look, and I first read this in 1996, and I think it was written in the late 80s. It has never left me. I absolutely adore Roddy Doyle's writing. I've read many, many of his books, but this was the very first one. And if you haven't read it, it was just so refreshing and unusual when it first came out, because Roddy Doyle is Irish. The novel is almost completely, I don't know if you can see, but it's almost completely dialogue between the characters, and you get lots of music lyrics as well. And pardon me, and it tells the story of Jimmy Rabeat, who is kind of this expert on music, and he's coerced very loosely into forming this band. And they are the most dysfunctional. I mean, I think, for anyone who's ever been in any sort of band or played live music with another group of people, there are so many aspects of this story that ring true. And it's really funny. It's the timing, the comic timing in this is pitch perfect. And you have to sort of tune in to the Irish dialect of the characters talking to each other. But yeah, it's this band, and they form, and they've got this amazing vocalist, and they've got these young girls who are like the backing singers, and they've got Jimmy the Lips who plays the trumpet, and it's just if you're into soul as well, I think you'll enjoy it. But I just found it very refreshing and totally entertaining, and actually I may well sit down and reread it, because it's been quite a time. There was a best-selling film version of the novel, and there is still a band called The Commitments. I don't know whether it has any of the original members from the original cast, but they do still tour. I was lucky enough to see them, oh gosh, it's probably 20 years ago now, but I think they're still on the road. And it was an absolutely wonderful experience. So there you go. This is a really uplifting and just a very honest look at the way that a group of people interact when they're trying to do something creative. So I pulled off 3 books from my shelf, and I've actually got my bookmark in page 35 of this one, because I started it. I've been to the hairdressers this morning, I don't know if you can tell. And so I always take a book to read. They don't mind. I'm quite antisocial in the hairdressers. And I fancied, because I've been reading quite a lot of books about war and tyranny and da-di-da-di-da, I fancied a bit of a sort of palate cleanser. And quite a few of you lovely people have recommended this book to me. It is Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. It's a Japanese writer, and I think a male writer. I don't know. I don't understand how the it doesn't say. Not that it particularly matters. I don't understand how Japanese naming works, whether there's a masculine or feminine ending or whatever. So I apologise that I'm not sure about that. But anyway, I'm really enjoying this. It centres on this young woman who has been seeing this, she's been going out with this boy for a while, and out of the blue he suddenly tells her that he's getting married, and she thinks his phrasing's a little bit strange when he makes this announcement, I'm getting married, rather than we're getting married, and he's actually getting married to somebody else, somebody in fact who he's been seeing for several years. So she, her life sort of spirals, she starts sleeping all the time, and her mum sort of intervenes and orchestrates a phone call from her uncle, who happens to own said bookshop. And she resigns from her job because she's working with this man that she's split with, and so he offers her accommodation in his bookshop, which has a bathroom and all those sorts of facilities, because he needs someone to open up the shop in the morning. And when she arrives, she's completely, she hasn't seen her uncle for at least 10 years. She was close to him when she was little. She now finds him a bit sad and creepy. And it's, their relationship is changing and developing already as I read the book. But also I think this book is going to be very much about our relationship with what we read. So he reads avidly. The books are all sort of contemporary Japanese fiction in his bookshop, and there are thousands of them. And she has not been reading. She's not a reader, and she's been tempted. She just to the point I've got to. She's been tempted to pick up a book and read it. So yeah, I am really. It's gentle. It's very, it's not flowery language, which I feel like I need at the moment. It's very clear, simple, lucid prose. And thank you very much for recommending it, because I will possibly finish this today. It's a really calm book. And the other book I'm hoping to get to is Mothering Sunday, because again, it's quite a racy cover, isn't it, by Graham Swift. Now, Graham Swift is another writer who I think is absolutely fantastic. I've read several of his novels. Again, he looks at the lives of very ordinary people and writes beautiful characterization. I think this book, from what I can remember, is called Mothering Sunday because it's about a young woman whose mother has, well, I don't know whether she's died. I assume she has. Her mother isn't in her life anymore, and it's Mother's Day. So what's she going to do with her day? And I think there's a romantic, probably quite spicy liaison that happens as part of this. So I think that's where the kind of love story is. And I think, if I'm right, I think this novel is also set in the 1920s. So it's kind of, taking a look. I think the young woman involved is like a domestic servant of some kind. So I think, it'd be interesting, having talked about Sula, which takes place at the same sort of period in history. I think it'd be really interesting to read a contemporary experience to that's happening on the other side of the world. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. From start to finish, Swift's is a novel of stylish brilliance and quiet narrative verve, and that's kind of how I feel about his novels. Actually, I couldn't have said it better myself. And then finally, this is a book that is all over Instagram and things at the moment, and rightly so. It was shortlisted for the International Book Prize. It's Small Boat by Vincent Delecroix, who is a French writer. So it's also translated by Helen Stevenson. And I don't think any of us, certainly living in the UK, on this end of Europe, can escape this horrible, unrelenting, dark situation between the French coast and the British coast, and the fact that lots of refugees are making this awful decision to cross the Channel. And this novel actually, and it's in, certainly in the UK, this is an issue which is being seized upon by the right in quite an alarming way. So I feel like I want to understand this a bit better, and I think this novel is probably going to help me. It focuses on a real event in 2021, not 2021. So I'm zooming forward 100 years now from the other two novels I've just spoken about. And it focuses on a boat that gets into difficulty, I think in French waters. And I think there is sort of mistaken communication between the French Coast Guard and the boat, and then possibly the British as well. And the novel focuses on a French woman who was taking calls in the call centre that was dealing with this crisis. And unfortunately, 27 people died as a result of the lack of response to this boat. So it's kind of like a novel that is investigating what happened and what went wrong, but also looking very closely at who do we blame. This woman was doing her job. So yeah, was it her fault? Was it society's fault? Was it God? It's, that's the avenue that this author has very cleverly, I suspect, decided to go down. And I'm really looking forward to being able to sort of confront that conversation myself. So I leave you with that, and hopefully I'll be reporting back before too long on how I got on with these short reads. Take care, everybody. Happy Shorty September. Please let me know any thoughts about any of the books that I've talked about, or if you are, you know, involved in thinking about short novels this month, and you've got some gems that you want to share, please let me know, because I really enjoy all the recommendations that come in the comments below. Anyway, take care, everybody. Happy reading. Bye.